BC for a stronger local economy, for a safer Vancouver, for more patios.
We kicked their f***ing asses. We destroyed them. 4 of the Vancouver police officers involved in the death of Miles Gray in 2015 were already under investigation because of an incident that left a man with a broken jaw just 6 weeks earlier, CBC News has learned. In addition, one of the 4 officers is now awaiting a criminal trial for assault related to another arrest that seriously injured a cyclist in 2017. Though Gray was killed more than 7 years ago, his family only recently learned the names of all 9 officers who were on the scene when he died. His mother, Margie Gray, was furious when she learned about the officers' histories. They know the common denominators are out there, these violence-prone police, and yet they do nothing. If the cops had been dealt with properly at the time, my son may well be alive. BC Police Officers Oversight Agency forwarded a report to the Crown in the case of Miles Gray in the belief the officers may have committed a crime. But the case of the broken jaw, all 4 police officers were cleared of wrongdoing. Miles Gray was unarmed when he died in Burnaby, BC in a backyard on August 13, 2015. Gray was 33 years old, making a delivery for the Shelt-based florist business when the police were called after he confronted a South Vancouver homeowner for watering her lawn during the summer's extended drought. Officers restrained Gray's arms and legs, punched and kicked and kneed him, pepper sprayed him, and struck him with a baton, according to reports from the BC Prosecution Service. His list of injuries included a fractured voice box, several broken bones, a ruptured testicle, and it was so extensive that forensics experts were never able to pinpoint a cause of death. No one except for the police saw what happened that day. In December of 2020, the Crown announced that none of the officers would be criminally charged, in part because of the lack of witnesses. Because the witnesses in this case were the police, who may have, again allegedly, beat the ever-loving fuck out of him and killed him. I just had this gut feeling. Those officers' connections to other incidents have come to light due to advocacy of another mum, Carol DeBauer, who took the action after she learned about Gray's death. I just had a gut feeling about the situation, and that's when I reached out to Margie, thinking there's something wrong here. Her son Mitchell had been arrested in his apartment on June 28, 2015 for violating a no-contact order related to domestic violence. According to a report, the Independent Investigations Office, BC Police Oversight Agency, his jaw was broken along with his finger. His arm was punctured by a police dog. The IIO ultimately cleared the officers of using excessive force. A lawsuit alleging brutality, and the arrest was settled out of court. Now, fast forward to not too long ago when we find this out about the Miles Gray probe.
It was 2015 when Miles Gray died following a confrontation and beating involving several Vancouver police officers. A coroner's inquest followed, which classified the 33-year-old's death as a homicide. Now, 9 years after Gray's death, a Police Act investigation has determined none of the 7 officers' actions involved misconduct. Allegations of abuse of authority and neglect of duty have been deemed not substantiated.
I'm pretty upset, but I'm not surprised by it. It's been 9 years of this where we've gotten nowhere. So it's just another hit, right?
The Police Act investigation involved Constables Bo Spencer, Hardeep Sahota, Corey Folkstad, Josh Wong, Nick Thompson, Derek Kane, and Eric Burznek. Findings are included in this 85-page report obtained by Global News. The report was done by Discipline Authority Neil Dubord, who is chief of the Delta Police Department. In the report, Dubord states, even if the officers were each employing an objectively justifiable amount of force, it can be argued that at some point the use of force by all of them collectively tilted over to become excessive and unnecessary force.
Shocking that this form of interaction is found to be not blameworthy.
Dubord says his abilities as discipline authority were limited by the Police Act, commenting, Police Act discipline proceedings are entirely unlike trials or many administrative tribunal hearings. The evidence is almost totally a written record, and there is no cross-examination.
I love that. So it's like, hey, by the way, the review found that they did, in fact, perhaps use excessive force. Hard to know in this situation because, again, the only witnesses are the cops that beat him to death. So that's wild. And then the very person who's supposed to be overseeing this is like, unfortunately, because of something known as the Police Act, my ability to actually, cross-examine this or investigate this is quite limited, in fact. And yeah, that's pretty much how the system works. Here you have it.
While the respondent officers may challenge findings, the converse is not true. There is nobody there to challenge the officers' evidence or submissions. It is a strangely lopsided process.
Now, I want to say a couple things here quickly. This is not taking place in the United States. This is taking place in Canada. This was, once again, a case where there was clearly, I would say, misconduct being on the behalf. At the very least, that's like the nicest, most good faith term you could use. Misconduct was being used where there was a multiple amount of police officers who beat someone to death, who was, again, delivering flowers. Yeah. Now, is this person an angel? Most likely not. Does that mean that they deserve to be beaten to death by the police, including, a damaged voice box and ruptured testicle? I mean, it's pretty extreme. Seems pretty fucking intense, to say the very least. The public outrage of this was not as loud as you would have thought. Not a lot of people, I think, even know about this story. And this, again, involves a white male, a white man who was beaten to death by police officers while doing a delivery because he was in the middle of a confrontation with a neighbor who apparently was watering her yard. Now, is it his place to talk to neighbors while he's doing deliveries? I am already hearing all the things like, well, what exactly was he doing? Was she innocent in this? It's like, yeah, very different to be like, hey, it's probably wrong of you if you're doing a delivery to walk up to a neighbor and be like, you shouldn't water right now. We're in the middle of a water conservation thing. You're not supposed to be doing that. But hey, that's like a different story for a different time. Does that deserve death, I ask you? Does that kind of a confrontation for an unarmed man delivering flowers deserve to have himself be beaten to death, at least allegedly? We don't fully or ever will fully know what happens because this is as far as this story went up until not too long ago.
If the problem is the Police Act, then the Police Act ought to be revisited.
Dubourd's report also states, with no testing of the evidence or arguments, with no counterweight, any discipline authority will be confined to the findings arising on the available evidence, which may be untested and might be incomplete.
It doesn't make sense. And I'm like, why after 9 years are we going to keep going and going to just keep hitting roadblock after roadblock? For what? Like, there's been so much pain and agony and anguish and just nothing.
Vancouver police told Global News the investigation has taken far too long and has caused significant stress on everyone involved and their families. Because this decision must now be reviewed by the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner, we are unable to speak further about this issue. Complainants can now request a review by a retired judge involving a public hearing or review on the record. The OPCC can also make recommendations. The outcome still unclear, more than 9 years after Miles Gray was killed.
Now, one of the reasons I bring this all up as well is to say that, like, I know I've heard criticism before that a lot of the reasons why there isn't, reform at the very least being done to police agencies is because, well, I mean, a lot of the horrifying stories you hear, Lance, are involving minority groups, and I think people just don't take them seriously enough. I think it's because you're always talking about stories involving Indigenous people being brutalized by the police, and then because of that, maybe people aren't just taking this as seriously as it is. And it's like, no, I don't think people realize how deeply entrenched we are, and it is through years of propaganda, to just accept the system as is and just keep continuously accepting a system in which this happens to everybody. This happens to, again, in this case, we have a white male who was, again, brutally beaten to death by the police, allegedly, insofar as we know. And there wasn't, like, enough public outrage to actually demand that. Why is it that they have so much protection, even in Canada? Between the fact that there is an actual act, there's a police union, there are members of the police union that have now deeply entrenched themselves within city politics. And because of that, they're actually trying to change having simply state power, which is funded by all of us who pay taxes. If you pay taxes, you directly help fund the police themselves. But if they get involved in politics, that starts to make things really messy. Right? Because they're also going to be influencing. I would say there's a massive conflict of interest in there. There shouldn't be police in politics. And that happens to be the city that I live in, Vancouver, where here are these two candidates coming up. And they're directly actually related to this case that I was just talking about. So audio leaks of Vancouver by-election candidates discussing their running mate. So on the left here, we have Jamie Stein. You might know Jamie Stein from some of the social media battles I was having online, because it got revealed that while he was in line, he was texting someone he worked with on his campaign who was sending very transphobic messages back and forth. So that's Jamie Stein to the left. And on the right is Ralph Kaiser, his running mate. Global News has obtained audio of the ABC candidate in Vancouver's upcoming by-election speaking about his running mate, tech business leader Jamie Stein. So on the left, we have a tech bro, basically trying to get into politics, because what a surprise there. The same things that are happening in the United States are a model that are apparently being emulated everywhere, even for local politics here in Vancouver. The idea that all these super rich tech bros are also suddenly being like, hey, by the way, if we play fast and loose with politics, we can also control everything. So it's working out for Elon Musk. Why don't we do it at the local level? Alongside the cops. Tech business leader Jamie Stein is running with Ralph Kaisers, who's the head of the Vancouver Police Union. So this was basically the election that took place on Saturday here in Vancouver, as we had the head of the police union on the right running alongside a tech bro who got caught doing some pretty intense transphobia. So there's a leaked audio in which, from an event at UBC on March 11th, Jamie Stein ponders if running alongside Kaisers was the biggest mistake of his life. AKA, was my running mate, the head of the police union, a mistake? The only negative tweets I get are, why are you running with Ralph? Stein can be heard saying in the audio. I just knew he was always getting into trouble on Twitter. Stein referenced their introductory press conference in February and how it was taken aback by questions to Kaisers about his role on the Miles Gray case, the one I was just talking about. I look at my wife, who's here with my 3 kids, like, did I just make the biggest mistake of my life? Stein said. Kaisers was named in a 2023 Office of Police Complaint Commissioner report into the 2015 death of Miles Gray during a violent arrest. The report alleges that Kaisers and other union leaders were present the day Gray died and counseled the arresting officers not to take any notes. I was actually not present the day at that incident and did not instruct any of our members as to what they should do or not do, Kaiser said on February 20th. In the leaked audio, Stein mentions that nobody told him about Kaiser's past. When pressed Thursday, Stein couldn't recall who he was speaking to on the leaked take, but his tune changed after spending at least 2 weeks campaigning with Kaisers. When you spend that much time with someone, you learn who someone is as a person, Stein said on Thursday. Ralph is a caring, kind individual. He's a father, a grandfather, and he's running to make Vancouver a better place. The Vancouver by-election was set for April 5th. So that kind of sets the stage for everything. We have a party, and in Vancouver it's called the ABC Party. It's already filled with ex-cops, and in this case they were trying to get both a tech bro and the head of the Vancouver Police Union elected onto the council to, again, make their power complete and total. And it was getting very, very frightening on this end. So I've said this for a while. I say this when I go into other podcasts and stuff. I'm like, hey, you know what we should really be doing is we should be talking about how in by-elections and local elections, there's not a lot of turnout. Not a lot of people show up. In our by-election here in Vancouver last time, we had between 11 and 13% turnout. Very, very small. We're talking a very small percentage of the entire city pays attention to this kind of stuff. And if we wanted to, we could start running candidates who actually cared about the issues that we care about and get them elected to our local city council. And I'm not just talking about, you know, a left-leaning liberal. I'm talking about getting like actual socialists elected. And I think there's this effect that takes place when people get into the actual political process between, you know, maybe their activism and their activism lives. I can give you a really quick example. The premier of my province, his name is David Eby. He used to be pretty radical. I mean, he was showing up and getting arrested at pipeline protests. He was writing books and guidelines on how to deal with being arrested by the police. He was very eco-conscious. He was, and very, you know, harm reduction. We need to kind of work towards a pathway of legalizing drugs so that less people die. That's who he used to be. And since he's been the premier of the province, he's gone further and further right and turned into whatever modern gobbledygook that he is today, which is pretty, you know, capitalist, corporate centrist. And so that seems to be just part of the machine. When you go into the political machine, it changes you, right? So maybe what we should be doing is, instead of running people who are well-to-do libs or hoping that well-to-do libs get elected, we can run people who are far more left. And then once they get churned up by the machine, at worst, they come out as Democratic Socialists. You know, that would be really nice. We can put in some anarchists, some communists, some anarcho-syndicalists, maybe even an ANPRIM for funsies. And if a couple of them can get elected, well, then down the road, effectively, you know, once they've gone through that process, they will still hold on to a lot of their core beliefs. They might not be saying that they're openly and proud communists or anything like that. And look at the cringe that he's producing. These were their campaign ads that they were running.
Hey, Vancouver! Vote ABC for a stronger local economy, for a safer Vancouver, for more patios, plazas, and
They found a way to turn the millennial pause into a whole campaign ad. So what should we do? What do you mean? This election's coming up. We got to make an ad. What do we do? Well, I don't know who the candidates are. The right-wing tech bro, that guy, and the head of the Vancouver Police Union. Okay. I don't know, walk towards the camera maybe, smile, kind of. Don't really need to talk much about policy.
An exciting downtown Vancouver.
For building more housing faster and investing in vibrant neighborhoods.
For more childcare spaces and a seniors-friendly city. Hey, Vancouver! Get out and vote!
Vancouver, get out and vote. The stage has been set. And holy fuck, vote you did. I went to early voting because I just wanted to get it out of the way. I have never in my life, for any election in Canada, waited more than about 5 to 10 minutes tops. I went for early voting. Took about 45 minutes to do early voting. And that's unheard of for like a local election, a by-election. I was like, that's interesting. I've never seen that before with lineups for going around the buildings, but that's certainly, it's indicative of something. Hard to place it, but it seems like a lot of people are very, very mad, and a lot of people are very mobilized and energized. And there was also just this really, really neat thing in the air. I got to tell you, when I was waiting in line, and then on Saturday when I was going by and seeing all the massive lines around the city, because the city, it was just like swamped. Like Saturday for a by-election, again, something that no one even knows about or talks about. Most normies are like, oh, there's an election today. Oh, I had no idea. So what's that all about? There were lineups everywhere, just lineups down the blocks, lineups going down the streets. If you drove down major streets of Vancouver on Saturday, all you would have seen was lines and lines of people everywhere, which again got more people asking, like, what the fuck is going on? So it turns out this party, ABC, the cop party, they actually had dramatically underfunded the amount of money that they were going to spend between the last by-election and this election, and they would just reduce the amount of personnel. That's all they do. They just keep on taking away all kinds of social and public spending, and then they try to gut programs. Let's get rid of the library. Let's get rid of this. We should get rid of the police. No. More money for them. Money. We need 200 more cops, but then everything else needs to get scaled back and reduced. And so we had a disaster on our hands. We had a by-election where lots of people wanted to vote. Lots of people were showing up, and some of them were waiting in line for 2.5 hours. I know Americans are like, first time. But again, this is not something that often happens ever in the history of Vancouver. People were like, I've been voting my whole life and I've never seen this before. So it was a combination of a disaster mixed with, clearly, there was a lot of energy. Now the rules are, and this is just for everyone to know, I don't know if it applies to your city or town, but this is a cross-Canada thing. If you are in line to vote, even if the polls are going to close at 8 p.m., if you're in line, they cannot refuse you. So stay in line. And this is something that happened in this election. People got into the lines, and if you show up and you're in line, even if the line is 2.5 hours long, if you got in there before the polls close at 8 o'clock, then you get to vote. You get to do a democracy. They cannot refuse you. If you get in line, they will cut it off. They will certainly be like, okay, it's 8 p.m., the polls are closing. But if you are in that line, and even if it takes 2.5 hours to get to the front, your democracy counts. Remember that, because that's also something that a lot of people who might not want people to vote start saying, it's going to be so long, don't worry about it. Do you really want to wait 2.5 hours to vote for your local city councilor? What even is a local city councilor? What are we talking about here? But then that goes back to this whole thing. We had this huge drama going on between a political party that was so deeply entrenched with billionaires, Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon, funding all of these signs that they were putting up all over the city. They were pouring tons and tons of cash into this. And then on the other hand, we had us, the grassroots socialists of the Cope Party. And I don't know how to say this other than we kicked their fucking asses. We destroyed them. This person you see before you here, this radical leftist who was showing up to protest Ken Sim with a homemade sign that he had made saying police out of politics, who eventually got ejected, this radical socialist, communist, Marxist, he just destroyed all the other candidates. This isn't even the final count. Blew them out of the water. Down here is Jamie Stein, 9,267 votes, over 3 times the amount of votes. No monies. This was all people power. This was grassroots democracy taking place in real time. And I also want to add that, like, this same asshole, Jamie Stein, I pulled up his, transphobic tweet a couple seconds ago. Everything they've been telling you, especially after seeing the U.S. election, involving the way that perhaps liberals or center-left types or progressives, how they need to conduct themselves going forward, that you really can't talk about LGBTQ plus issues anymore. They're not a winning thing. People, obviously, the right have won that topic. We got to let it go. We need to throw trans people under the bus, all that kind of shit. Bullshit. bullshit. If you start to sacrifice civil rights, if you start to sacrifice core beliefs simply to win elections, simply to say, oh, well, apparently this is just the direction the country's going in, so unfortunately I no longer believe in civil rights or something like that, that is just not true. So I've said this before. I think all of you, if you are interested in, effectively making change in your local area, you should be concentrating, again, on local elections more so than, say, the big ones, the federal ones, in which there are these large corporate operations taking place where a lot of people are already on board and they're voting for, like, in my federal election here in Canada, it's coming down to the very similar kind of like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump thing, right? It's like you're going to get a neoliberal in the form of Mark Carney versus someone who seems to be pretty associated with the far right, which is Pierre. And like at the end of the day, I could spend hours and hours and hours being like, I'm going to do everything in my power to try and get Jagmeet Singh, the Social Democrat, elected, but the maths do be mathing, and it's looking very, very clearly like it's going to be one of two outcomes. It's going to be a liberal is elected, or it's going to be a conservative is elected in that election. But in this local election, the Vancouver one, and I keep doing this and saying this, you got to concentrate smaller and smaller and smaller. If you join and get organized with a group, in Vancouver, it happened to be COPE. That was the organization of lefties. They banded with the Democratic Socialists of Vancouver, who wanted to effectively work on a people-powered campaign and work on something that is actually achievable and winnable, such as this is a major city, the third biggest city in the entire country, and our council, we have an opportunity here with both the political climate and the fact that we have to get behind a candidate to get someone elected who's an actual leftist, and we start there. We get him elected, and in this case, we got two leftists elected, by the way. Lucy, who's the second choice, who also won and is on part of city council, she's really big on building housing. Sean Orr is really big on taxing the rich. I hope they can work together and their messages can, combine to try and effectively try and help the homeless crisis that we're having here. But I'll say this. When I sat down with the organization, because I started going to meetings, everything everyone tells you is 100% true. I saw Adam Conover's video that he made about LA and his local election in LA, talking about how I feel hopeless a lot of the time, like most of you. It feels like we have no power. It feels like the left don't have a voice in politics. It feels like electoral politics is a waste of time. And it also feels like the worst possible forces are so much greater than all of us. The billionaires, the investment firms, the imperial objectives of the United States military, all that. It does feel like out of your control. But when you organize and you work with a small organization, that can be a local feeding program, it could be an LGBTQ plus organization, could be just any local org in your area, or just a community of people who are looking to, again, work on effectively, doing change in one way or another, it actually revitalizes you because you realize you're not so alone. There's a lot of other people who have the same fears and concerns and want to work towards a better world alongside you. Honestly, nothing will recharge your batteries more than just sitting down with a group of people who are effectively trying to enact change in one way or another. That change doesn't have to be, again, that you win a local election or that you win a by-election or something like that. It could be simply that, hey, let's set up a feeding program that didn't exist. Let's set up a network of, stocks, fridges that can be stocked. So community fridges, we can set up community pantries, and that's going to be it. Our goals are very achievable. We have a goal of setting up 2 or 3 community pantries. We're going to let people know about them. We're going to get them frequently restocked, and that's going to have a mutual aid system that is going to make life a little easier for some people in our community. If it makes life easier for some people in our community, they'll have more time to do other stuff. Primarily, hopefully, spend time with their children or have time for their families or stuff like that if they don't have food insecurity. But then they move on to something else as well. The more that you liberate people from all of the constraints and the horrifying realities of capitalism, the more time they'll have and energy they have to try and help you make the world better and vice versa. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to work really hard on this campaign. I've worked personally in like 3 different political campaigns, I think, as long as I've been a streamer here publicly and tried to galvanize all of you, right? One of them was a federal campaign for NDP, and that was with Brie Noulette. Didn't win. One of them was a local election with Brie Noulette, and we didn't win that one either. And then we went even more local and more again, smaller. This was a by-election, and we just fucking schooled every other political party. We schooled the corporate-backed ones. We schooled the deeply entrenched liberal ones. We schooled all of them with, again, a far leftist candidate. And I just want to put this out there. I was one of the first people who initially told the team that I don't know if this is going to be a good idea. And I'll explain why, but I want to eat some crow before all of you, okay? When I sat down with Cope and they were, and this is, no disrespect to Sean. I love Sean. I actually had a relationship with Sean by filming him when he was running for the Democratic Socialists of Vancouver back in the initial election that I was working with Cope and Brunelette. And I remember when they were telling me, I was like, so who's the candidate you're thinking of running in this election? They were like, oh, Sean Orr. I initially was like, he's too based. I'm just telling you, my personal view from analyzing social media is that he's too extreme. He's a true believer. He is, free Palestine. He is workers' rights. He is LGBTQ plus rights. He's someone who I can just see they're going to target so easily. They're going to go after him. They're going to be like, he's a communist. He's a radical leftist. They're going to destroy him. He doesn't have a background in like the things that most politicians have backgrounds in. What? Were you a lawyer? Were you in business? Were you in politics? Like he's not a politician. He's an outspoken advocate for rental rights. He puts down and lists as his what is my history in politics? Dishwasher. What was part of his official statement. So he is a man of the people, effectively. And they were pushing back against me, and they're like, I think that's what this moment calls for. I think he's incredible at galvanizing folk because he does actually, just try to talk to them like human beings. He has worked with so many different, rental and tenancy boards to try and help people who may be evicted. That seems to be a passion of his. He has worked as an artist a lot of his life, so he knows a lot of different communities. But you know what they all told me, and this is what everyone should learn from this, especially if you want to go and try and emulate this in your city or town. This is so true. There are so many more renters in a major city than there are property owners. And it's the property owners who, again, are going to have a lot of corporate backing, and again, who are probably going to have politicians who are going to try and reflect their personal beliefs of NIMBYism. Not in my backyard. No. We got to stop. We need more cops. We need more police. We need more people on the streets, making sure the streets are safe. That's the solution, and that solution has resulted in mass death. And the real solution is supportive housing. Is housing first solutions, the way other countries and other cities and districts have implemented them. And if we can get that message out, and this is what they told me, and they were totally right on this. I'm so happy to be decidedly wrong on this, is that resonated with way more people. It is like, yes, there are more renters than there are owners. Yes, there are a small amount of mansion-owning billionaires who are fucking over the working class, and he is going to be an unapologetic voice for the people, and that was his campaign. He, yes, did a lot of groundwork. Yes, there was a lot of volunteers. Yes, there was a lot of people. And myself, I got to make the official campaign video for their candidacy. This was what the page was, though. And again, this is a little bit different than what you see most politicians, especially ones who have been victorious. So here's the video, I'll play in a second. But Sean Orr is a housing activist, renter, working class dishwasher, and columnist who's been writing about Vancouver for 20 years. He's known in Vancouver for being an outspoken and sincere advocate for people. He's not afraid to be outspoken to fight for what is right. I initially, me and all my fucking years, this is why, by the way, podcasters shouldn't be politicians, because on a certain level, I'm also completely in my own bubble of being like, I analyze media for a living, and I don't understand why the left keep losing and why the right are victorious. This is a winning ticket. This is a ticket that can be emulated anywhere else. And this is a ticket that, honestly, people need to get on board with. The myth that people on the left or people who are progressive need to completely disassociate themselves from anything related to their actual policies and just try to emulate the right, to become a diet version of them, to become diet Republicans, to become diet conservatives, to say, hey, by the way, don't worry, we're gonna meet you halfway on things like immigration. Immigrants are evil. We're gonna meet you halfway on things like, hey, by the way, not all billionaires are bad, okay? Some billionaires help industry and we need them, all that kind of stuff. This was the exact opposite of that. This was, again, an unapologetic campaign centered around people power. And it not only worked, it fucking blew all the other candidates out of the water in a city, I'm going to add, that is not hardcore communist. I want to stress that. Some people are like, this is only possible in Vancouver because all of you are already commies, blah, blah. No, this city, again, is run by cops right now, okay? This city has fucking, if you go to the rich parts of Vancouver, you will have your mind blown by how large some of the mansions are here, built into the middle of a city that has a housing crisis, but there are these massive $20 and $30 million mansions here. There's a lot of rich motherfuckers. This city is also deeply entrenched in a lot of zones that are conservative voting blocks, because a lot of people in those communities, for one reason or or another. Again, NIMBYism, wanting to protect maybe the property value of their homes, all that kind of stuff. It is not a radical communist city by any stretch. That would be a massive exaggeration to keep saying that.
The housing market is not broken. It's working as designed. It's designed to benefit the super rich and investors and make the rest of us pay the price. It's designed to jack up our rents and make homelessness skyrocket. Vancouver doesn't have to be this way. We can make housing affordable by closing loopholes landlords use to jack up rents, building affordable public housing, and stopping dem-evictions. I'm Sean Orr, and I'm running to be your next city councillor with COPE. On April 5th, let's fight for Vancouver.
Handing out pamphlets, wearing long coat emblazoned with a pin that reads Vic Ken Sim on a cold Saturday afternoon outside of Riley Park's Farmers Market, Sean Orr doesn't seem worse for wear. As Orr, a city council candidate for COPE, introduces himself to passersby and asks if they know about Vancouver's by-election that's happening on April 5th. They did a lot of community outreach. They did feeding programs, something I've talked about before, just literally cooking free meals for people who need them. And at those free meals, there's a lot of people who obviously were just showing up at parks and you know, some of the beaches of Vancouver and stuff. And be like, what's this all about? Hey, we're just handing out free pancakes. If you want to have some food, here's a free meal. Also, we wanted to know if you know about how Ken Sim and his policies have been destroying our city and how it's been effectively transferring more wealth to the billionaire class. And most people are not billionaires. In fact, the majority of them aren't. In fact, they're, again, the only dangerous minority that exists are billionaires. And that message was resonating with more and more people. These programs, by the way, they not only help the community, but they also get people engaged in local politics. You wouldn't know from the night before, he was introducing Wolf Parade at the Vogue ahead of the celebrated Canadian band's 20th anniversary tour. Apologies to Queen Mary. It also, his message started resonating with a lot of big names, including, personal hero, Dr. Gabor Mate, who ended up endorsing him, Sven Robinson, an NDP MP, Indigenous rights and climate justice organizer, Danielle Lapointe. Sean gives me hope. He's not just showing up when it's convenient. He's been showing up for years for tenants, the unhoused, for Indigenous sovereignty, for peace, for climate justice. Again, if it was considered a radical agenda, that agenda included things like land back, ending genocide, supporting a free Palestine, again, taxing billionaires to pay for supportive housing. These messages were not, despite the best efforts of, the right, the police, a lot of people who were his enemies, they did not destroy his campaign. And I know that's being sold right now internationally as like, oh, the left really need to see what happened in America and learn from this. They need to stop talking about trans rights. They need to stop talking about Palestine. They need to start talking more about tough borders and immigration. And maybe they need to support supporting police. I'm sorry, it's simply not true. A much more resonating message. Doesn't matter if you are left or right, Republican, conservative, liberal, Democrat, whatever you are. People are waking up to the fact that there is a disgusting amount of wealth inequality, and what can we do about it? And all the people who once used to say that they care about the elites and defeating the elites, like the Joe Rogans of the world, they don't. They became the elites. He is the mainstream media, and he is defending the elites, and he has billionaires on his podcast, just on a rotating carousel, talking about culture war issues, because that's what the right are doing. The right offer you nothing. The right, honestly, at this moment in time, all they're effectively offering to voters and to people who want to actually get things are culture war issues. They are so hyper-focused on trans athletes are destroying all of our professional sports, and trans kids in school are turning the kids gay, and we need to talk about that. Because what are they actually doing on the other end? They're destroying the economy. Donald Trump is effectively nosediving the U.S. economy right now for his own gains to, again, consolidate power. That's one of the reasons fascists do this shit. But that's why they don't actually offer you anything. If you have a campaign centered around, I have a policy. That policy is anyone who has a mansion, I'm going to add a 1% mansion tax as soon as I have the ability to do so, and that money is going to go directly into supportive housing to reduce the amount of homeless people in the city. That's my plan. It's not radical. It's not a radical. Do you own a mansion? What do you consider a mansion? Property value of over $5 million. Oh, no, I don't. Okay. Well, then that's the vast majority of the voters right there. The vast majority of people don't own mansions. And then he's going to target the mansions. There you go. Easy sell.
Don't let this happen to you. Go to serfscoffee.com to order the only end-to-end owned Indigenous coffee company that delivers blood-free, conflict-free, and cruelty-free beans right to your door. 0% of people who drink serfscoffee.com have exploded spontaneously. By ordering right now, you get 10% off plus free shipping, and it's the best way to enjoy delicious coffee while not exploding. That's serfscoffee.com, serfscoffee.com.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This video wouldn't be at all possible without the financial support of all the people whose names you see on the screen right now. And if you want to unlock secret bonus episodes, content that we can't post anywhere else, or get the videos early before anyone else gets to see them, please go on to patreon.com/theserfs. For as little as $1, you can help support this channel and help make more videos like this possible. Our executive producers are Anna Loves Riley, Adrian McCarthy, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Garrett Sandoval, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Richard Boehm, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Tigwick, Trav, and Words Greenwood. And also, it wouldn't be possible without all the names you see on the screen right now. Again, if you want to help produce this content, it's only made possible through the funding of our patrons. Head on down to patreon.com/theserfs. That's patreon.com/theserfs.